Abigail sat at her desk and was organizing papers. Everyone else went home a while ago. The guard was doing his night rounds and saw her in the office. He knocked and said, "Mrs. Moore, you're still here? It's late. You should go home." "Yes, I'm just finishing up," Abigail said, smiling, putting the papers down and sighing. She wanted desperately for there to be someone waiting for her at home. Abby was a smart, beautiful woman who dressed well and came off as self-confident, self-sufficient, and happy. She was smart, beautiful, lived happily, and did what she wanted. Only those closest to her knew how far she was from being happy and how lonely she truly was. She was almost 40 and had no husband nor children. She didn't even have a dog or a cat. She had nowhere to rush to besides her empty, large, beautiful apartment and the dead silence within. Abigail got married early. She thought it was true love and would last forever, but after just a year of marriage, they were like strangers, and it seemed like whatever they had in common had disappeared, and they had completely different opinions and plans for the future. So they got divorced. All her following relationships were more like flings, without her feeling anything serious. Abigail decided to dedicate herself to her work. She was very successful. At 35, she became a partner in a fairly large, successful company. This made her feel better and improved her mood for a time. But the feeling of emptiness and loneliness enveloped her more and more over time. She desperately wanted to have a family. All her friends were married and many of them had more than one kid, so she wasn't able to see them often. Of course, this smart, beautiful, rich woman went on dates and had admirers, but it became clear quickly that either nothing would come of the relationship, or her dates were more interested in her money and connections than her herself. Abigail left the office, and it was already dark. After parking her car, she slowly walked home when she suddenly heard a sound. Abigail looked around and saw something moving in a corner. She was scared at first and wanted to run, but she heard another sound and stopped. It's probably a dog or a cat, she thought, and approached. She saw some rags in the corner and something moving underneath. "Who's there?" she said fairly loudly and roughly. A head popped out of the pile. "Please don't call the police," a small, skinny, filthy boy said, looking at Abigail pitifully. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Abby asked. "I'm Aiden. It's cold outside, and I just wanted to sleep here. I'll leave in the morning." Abby was torn up inside. The small boy was completely alone. He looked like he was about 5 years old and was skin and bones. He was filthy, and he stunk as well. "Are you hungry?" Abigail asked. He silently nodded and coughed. "Come with me," Abigail said, surprising herself, and took him by the hand. When they went inside, Aiden looked around with wide eyes. He'd never been anywhere like this. "All right, before we eat, you need to take a shower. Do you need help?" He muttered something under his breath. "How old are you, and how did you end up on the streets?" Abby asked, lathering him another time. "I'm 5, I think. I don't remember. I've always been there." Abigail fed Aiden, put him to bed, and dialed a number. She called a friend who knew someone with social services. She was interested in how she could find his parents, but her friend said that even if they were found, they were probably alcoholics or drug addicts, if not homeless like the boy. Abigail's friend told her not to worry about the boy since he had lived on the streets for so long. He had probably adjusted and learned to survive. Abigail was shocked at how calmly he said this. "No way. I couldn't let Aiden sleep on the street again." She decided that she had to help the boy. In the morning before going to work, she showed Aiden her house and told him what was what, how to heat up food, and said she'd be back in the evening. But when she looked at him, she realized something was wrong. He had a fever. Abby called work and said she wouldn't be there, which shocked them all. Miss Moore's absence in the office was extremely rare and was only because of business trips. Abby called the doctor. The doctor said he had bronchitis, which would turn to pneumonia if not treated quickly. Abigail took care of Aiden all week. She gave him medicine, did what the doctor said to, read him books, and just lay with him while he slept, and never averted her eyes. When Aiden got better, she happily played with him, went with him to stores to get clothes and toys, and made him food and even baked desserts. One day while reading him another story before bed, he asked, "When I get better, will you send me outside again?" Abby felt like she couldn't breathe. There was a frog in her throat and tears in her eyes. She realized she didn't want to and couldn't be apart from him, and that she loved him. She raised her head, set the book aside, gently pet his head and said, "I would be delighted if you stayed to live with me, if you want to." It was 20 minutes after school ended, and Aiden was nowhere. Abigail worriedly looked at all the kids' faces running out of school. It was Aiden's first day. He was really worried and spun away when the teacher took him by the hand and took him to class. It had been a year since Abigail had first found her son in that parking lot. Many people told Abby that he probably had bad genes, and there was no way to know what to expect from him, and if she decided to adopt a child, she should get a different one, and Aiden would be better in an orphanage. But Abby didn't want another child. She needed her son, Aiden. When all the documentation was finally finished and Abigail officially adopted Aiden, it was the first time he called her Mom. Abigail was happy, took him by the hand, hugged him tightly, and didn't let go. She had dreamed of this, of becoming a mom, and now she had a son. The school doors gradually emptied. There was a man standing next to Abigail who looked at the worried mom, smiled, and said, "Someone's late?" Abby smiled back and nodded. His smile was so natural and kind, and Abigail had never thought that men could smile like that. Aiden finally came out, but he wasn't alone. He was holding a little girl's hand. "Mom, I'm sorry I'm late. Ava lost her charm, and I was helping her find it." "Your son's a real gentleman," the man next to her said. "Thank you, young man, for helping my daughter," he said to Aiden and held out his hand. Aiden shook his hand and said, "My name is Aiden, and this is my mom, Abigail." "I'm Jason. Nice to meet you," he said, trying to keep a smile. "You have very beautiful ribbons in your braids. Did your mom do them?" Abigail asked the girl. "No, my dad did," she said and looked down. "Her mom died 2 years ago," Jason said quietly. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," Abigail said, becoming uncomfortable. "Ava, don't be sad," Aiden hugged his new friend. "I didn't have any parents until Abigail found me in a parking lot." Jason and his daughter looked at each other, then at Abigail. "It's a long story," she said, a little flustered. "Well, if you aren't in a hurry, we could go get some ice cream, and I'd love to hear your story," Jason suggested. The kids accepted excitedly. "Well, okay then," Abigail said, smiling. Jason's true, honest smile had caught Abigail off guard for some reason, and made her feel something unfamiliar, warm, and loving.